Earth did not declare war. Earth did something far worse. It sent a message, not to one species, not to a single empire, but to every intelligent civilization across the galaxy, simultaneously, instantly, without any detectable transmission method. No one knew how. No one knew from where. Only that it arrived everywhere. The message was short, cold, final. This is humanity's last warning. Any act of aggression against Earth or its colonies will result in immediate and total system-level erasure. This is not a threat. It is a promise. For a long moment, the galaxy didn't react, because it didn't understand. On the bridge of the Cartesian War Dreadnought Vigil of Dawn, Supreme Commander Refval read the message 3 times in silence. Around him, officers waited. No one spoke first. Finally, a junior analyst let out a quiet, nervous sound. System-level erasure? Ref did not respond immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the final line. It is a promise. Not we will try. Not we might. A promise. Trace the origin, Ref said. His voice was steady, controlled. The kind of voice that had commanded fleets across 1,000 systems. Already attempted, Commander, replied the navigation officer. There is no origin point. The signal did not travel. It simply appeared. That's not possible. Yes, Commander. Across known space, similar conversations were happening. On crystalline worlds where beings live for millennia. Inside hive minds that processed trillions of thoughts per second. Within ancient councils that had witnessed the rise and fall of entire star clusters. Everywhere, the same conclusion formed. Humanity had just done something impossible. And yet, most were not afraid. Not yet, because the galaxy had seen threats before. Empires rose. Empires fell. Weapons were built. Weapons were surpassed. And humanity? Humanity was new, young, unrefined, dangerous, perhaps, but not unimaginable. That was the first mistake. Refval finally turned away from the display. Prepare response, he said. To Earth, Commander? No. His gaze shifted to the stars beyond the viewport. To the Council. If humanity believed it could threaten the entire galaxy, then the galaxy would decide how to answer. What none of them realized, what none of them could have realized, was that the message was not meant to intimidate. It was not sent in anger. It was not even sent in fear. It was sent after humanity had already decided what would happen next, and far beyond the reach of any alien sensor. In regions of space that did not officially exist, something had already begun to move. 3 months before the message, there had been a battle, not a war, not an invasion, just a single engagement, brief, violent, and deeply confusing. Admiral Sarek Tau stood in silence as his flagship drifted through the graveyard. What remained of the 9th Expansion Fleet surrounded him, or what was left of it. Fragments of warships, once kilometers long, now floated as twisted shards of metal and scorched alloy. Hull sections peeled open like fruit. Weapon arrays gone. Engines silent. Entire sections of ships had simply vanished. Not destroyed. Not exploded. Just missing. Damage analysis complete, Admiral. His tactical officer said quietly. Sarek didn't turn. Report. A pause. Then, we don't understand it. That got his attention. Sarek slowly faced the central display. Wreckage rotated in holographic projection. Hundreds of ships, frozen in their final moments. Clarify. The officer swallowed. There are no consistent weapon signatures. No thermal residue. No radiation spikes. No kinetic impact patterns. He hesitated. It's as if each ship was undone differently. Sarek stepped closer. Differently how? The display shifted. One vessel appeared. Cleanly sliced in half, edges perfectly smooth. Another collapsed inward, like it had been crushed by invisible pressure. A third, intact, but completely powered down, every system dead without damage. And a fourth. Sarek narrowed his eyes. What happened to that one? The officer's voice dropped. We don't know, Admiral. The ship wasn't destroyed. It wasn't damaged. It was simply gone. No debris. No signal. No trace it had ever existed. Sarek felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. Not fear, not yet, but something close. How long did the engagement last? 7 minutes. 7 minutes. The ninth expansion fleet had taken 12 years to build. It had conquered 6 systems, defeated 3 rival empires. It was considered unstoppable. And in 7 minutes, it had ceased to exist as a functional force. Enemy losses? Sarek asked. Silence. Then, minimal. A new image appeared. One human vessel. Small, insignificant by all known standards. Barely 400 meters long. No visible heavy weapons. No shielding signatures. No energy output consistent with advanced combat systems. And yet, it was the only thing still operational at the center of the battlefield. They sent one ship? Sarek asked. Yes, Admiral. That's not possible. Yes, Admiral. The recording continued. The human vessel moved, not fast, not aggressively, but with a kind of certainty. It didn't dodge attacks. It didn't fire visible weapons. It simply acted, and ships around it began to fail, disappear, collapse, silently. Communication logs? Sarek demanded. Another pause. There was one transmission. Play it. Static flickered. Then a voice. Human. Calm. Almost polite. This engagement is now concluded. Please power down remaining systems and prepare for recovery operations. Medical assistance will be provided. Sarek stared at the playback. Medical assistance? Yes, Admiral. A second recording appeared. Human vessels, more of them now, arriving after battle, not to attack, not to finish the job, to rescue survivors. Escape pods were collected, wounded soldiers treated. Even enemy officers, high-ranking, were stabilized and transported. They saved us, someone whispered on the bridge. Sarek didn't answer, because that wasn't the part that mattered. What mattered was this. A single human ship had dismantled an entire fleet in minutes, using weapons that left no trace, no pattern, no explanation, and then they had helped the survivors. Sarek turned back toward the shattered remains drifting outside. For the first time in his long military career, he asked a question he had never needed to ask before. What are we actually fighting? No one had an answer, and now, 3 months later, humanity had sent a message to the entire galaxy, a warning, which meant only one thing. That battle had not been a victory. It had been a demonstration. The battle Admiral Sarek witnessed was not the first. That was the part that began to disturb people. At first, the ninth expansion fleet disaster had been classified, buried, explained away as experimental human weapons, unknown anomalies, command failure, anything but the truth. But then, analysts began comparing records, older reports, forgotten engagements, dismissed anomalies, and a pattern began to emerge. Back then, humanity had barely left its home system. Primitive drives, unstable colonies, limited defenses. The Cartesian Union had seen opportunity. A young species, resource-rich worlds, minimal resistance. It was supposed to be a 3-week campaign. Instead, it lasted 9 years. At first, everything went as expected. Human ships were slower, weaker, easily destroyed. But humans didn't fight like anyone else. They didn't retreat when they were outmatched. They adapted, rapidly, aggressively, almost irrationally. They modified civilian vessels into weapons, turned mining equipment into artillery, used asteroids as kinetic projectiles. And when they couldn't win, they changed the rules of the fight. Supply lines were hit, communications disrupted, outposts sabotaged from the inside. Even human civilians joined the resistance. Not trained soldiers, not professionals. But they fought anyway. The war dragged on. Losses mounted. Costs spiraled. Eventually, the Union withdrew. Official reason. Insufficient strategic value. Unofficial truth. It wasn't worth the price of fighting humans. This time, the galaxy came prepared. A coalition of species. Superior numbers. Superior technology. Complete data from the First War. They studied everything. human tactics, communication patterns, psychological behavior. They built counters for all of it. This time, there will be no surprises. The invasion began flawlessly. Human defenses collapsed within weeks. Colonies fell, orbitals destroyed. Victory seemed inevitable. Then, everything changed. Human ships started appearing in places they shouldn't be. Behind enemy lines, inside secured zones, deep within restricted space. Communication networks began to fail. Not jammed, not destroyed. Hijacked. Entire fleets received false commands, turned on each other, moved into traps they couldn't see. Then came the weapons. Not larger, not louder, not more powerful in any traditional sense. Just more precise. Single strikes disabling entire capital ships. Targeted system failures. Perfectly timed attacks. The coalition adapted, again, but humans adapted faster. Within 5 years, the invasion collapsed. Not because the coalition was weak, but because it could no longer predict human behavior. Official conclusion. Human unpredictability makes long-term engagement non-viable. This was supposed to end everything. No arrogance this time. No underestimation. 30 years of preparation. Every known human tactic studied. Every weakness analyzed. Every possible scenario simulated. They built the largest fleet ever assembled. Countermeasures for human tech. Psychological models of human decision-making. They even recruited human defectors, people who had abandoned their own species. If anyone could defeat humanity, it was this force. And yet, 7 minutes. That was all it took. No drawn-out war. No adaptation phase. No escalation. Just erasure. Clean. Efficient. Unexplainable. 3 wars. 3 different strategies. 3 overwhelming advantages. 3 defeats. And in each conflict, humans had revealed something new. First, resilience, then adaptation. And now, Sarek stared again at the battlefield logs, at ships that had simply ceased to exist, at weapons that left no trace, at a fight that ended before it even began. What comes after this? Someone asked quietly. No one answered, because the pattern was clear now. Each time the galaxy escalated, humanity responded with something beyond it, which meant, if there was a 4th conflict, there might not be a war at all, just an outcome. And suddenly, humanity's message didn't sound like a threat anymore. It sounded like a conclusion. Admiral Sarek Tau had studied countless species across the galaxy. Warriors, conquerors, hive minds, machines. Every one of them followed the same fundamental rule. Victory meant domination. When a war ended, the winner took everything. Territory, resources, technology. Survivors became labor or warnings. That was how the galaxy worked. That was how it had always worked. Humanity did not follow that rule. At first, no one noticed. It was dismissed as weakness, naivety, inexperience. But after 3 wars, it could no longer be ignored. They don't behave correctly. One analyst had said during a closed military briefing. At the time, it sounded absurd. Now, it sounded like the most accurate statement ever recorded. During the first conflict, there were reports, unverified at the time, of human soldiers refusing to execute captured enemies. Instead, they fed them, treated their wounds, then released them. No interrogation, no tracking devices, no punishment, just release. Command had assumed it was a localized failure in discipline. Those soldiers were labeled anomalies. They weren't. The pattern became harder to ignore. After major battles, human fleets didn't pursue fleeing enemies. They didn't destroy retreating ships. They didn't bombard weakened worlds. Instead, they broadcast coordinates, safe zones, neutral areas where enemy survivors could gather. And when those survivors arrived, human ships were already there, waiting, not with weapons, but with medical teams, supply drops, atmospheric stabilizers. They rebuilt our outposts. One captured officer had reported. Sarek remembered that report. It had been flagged as psychological contamination. They repaired our infrastructure. the officer insisted. They sent food. They restored power grids. Why? Command had asked. The officer's answer had never made sense. Because we needed it. By the time of the Third War, no one was confused anymore. They were disturbed. Because humanity's behavior wasn't inconsistent. It was deliberate. After the destruction of the Ninth Expansion Fleet, human recovery vessels arrived within minutes. Sarek had seen the recordings. Alien soldiers, injured, disoriented, expecting death, being carried onto human ships. Not restrained, not interrogated, treated, even high-ranking officers. Even those responsible for planning the invasion. No distinction, no punishment, just care. It created a contradiction the galaxy couldn't process. Humans fought like this, unpredictable, relentless, technologically overwhelming. But after the battle, they behaved like this, compassionate, restrained, almost protective. Two completely incompatible patterns. You cannot be both, a strategist once argued. You cannot be a species capable of total destruction and choose not to use it. But humanity did, repeatedly, and that made them more dangerous than any empire, because predictable enemies can be defeated, even powerful ones. But something that chooses when not to win, something that holds back, something that fights at a fraction of its true capability, that cannot be measured, cannot be modeled, cannot be countered. Sarek stood in the observation chamber, watching human rescue ships move through the wreckage of his fleet, carefully, methodically, saving lives they had no reason to save, lives that had come to destroy them. And suddenly, the question changed. It was no longer, how do we defeat them? It became, why are we still alive? Because if humanity had the ability to end battles in minutes, if they could dismantle fleets without effort, if they could erase ships without a trace, then every war they had fought, every loss they had taken, every city they had allowed to fall was a choice, not a limitation, a decision. Sarek felt that same unfamiliar pressure in his chest again, stronger now, because for the first time, he wasn't thinking about human strength. He was thinking about human restraint, and which one was more dangerous. The first report was dismissed. Sensor error. That was the official conclusion. A deep-range observation probe station near the outer edges of human-controlled space had detected something unusual. Mass signatures. Large ones. Impossible ones. Structures the size of small moons, appearing in empty space, then disappearing. No warp signatures. No energy trails. No gravitational distortion consistent with known engineering. Just there, and then not. The probe recalibrated, ran diagnostics, corrected for interference. The readings came back stronger. Multiple objects now, moving, building, changing configuration in real time. And yet, when visual confirmation was attempted, there was nothing. Empty space. The report was archived, flagged as faulty instrumentation, until the second incident. Long-range surveillance of Earth's moon had always been standard procedure, nothing unusual, routine scans, until the energy levels changed. Repeat that, the monitoring officer said. Energy output from the lunar surface has increased by 312% over baseline. That's not possible. There's no infrastructure they're capable of. He stopped because the next scan came in. Correction, 417%. What are they doing up there? Unknown. Thermal imaging showed nothing. No construction. No activity. No movement. But the energy kept rising, like something massive was operating, just beyond detection. Then came the navigation failures. Exploration vessels began reporting something impossible. Star systems that didn't exist. Or rather, systems that appeared on sensors, but not on maps. Confirmed coordinates. Command ordered. Coordinates are stable. Cross-reference with stellar charts. No match. Ships approached. Carefully, cautiously. Sensors showed planets, asteroid belts, even artificial structures. Then, at a certain distance, everything disappeared. No fade, no distortion. Just gone. as if the system had never existed. By the time the third, fourth, and fifth reports came in, they could no longer be ignored. A closed session was called. High-level clearance only. Data from multiple species, multiple sensor arrays, multiple independent observations, all showing the same thing. Human space was changing, expanding in ways that didn't follow physical laws, hiding structures that should be impossible to conceal, building something, but no one knew what or how large it was. Admiral Sarek stood in the briefing chamber as the final report was presented. A projection filled the room, a map of human-controlled space, or, at least, what the galaxy believed human-controlled space to be. Then another layer appeared. Red markers, hundreds of them, each representing an anomaly, invisible structures, unknown energy sources, unmapped systems. Sarek's eyes narrowed. That's not possible. The analyst didn't respond immediately because the next layer appeared, a simulation, connecting the anomalies. Lines formed between them, patterns. A structure began to emerge, not random, not scattered, organized, deliberate, designed. Sarek felt it again, that pressure, that realization forming just out of reach. What are we looking at? He asked quietly. The analyst hesitated. Then, we don't know, Admiral. A pause. But whatever it is, he swallowed. It's bigger than anything the galaxy has ever built. Silence filled the room, because everyone was thinking the same thing. If this was what humans were building, if this was what they were hiding, then the fleet that had been destroyed in 7 minutes hadn't faced a weapon. It had faced a fraction. Sarek returned to his quarters at Cycle. He couldn't sleep. The reports replayed in his mind, over and over. Invisible structures, impossible energy, hidden systems, and then a memory from the battlefield. That single human transmission. This engagement is now concluded. Not battle, not combat. Engagement, as if it had been routine, controlled, planned. Sarek sat in the darkness, staring at nothing, and for the first time, he understood what truly made humanity dangerous. It wasn't their weapons. It wasn't their strategy. It wasn't even their ability to win. It was this. No one had any idea how much of their power they were not showing. And now, they had sent a message to the entire galaxy. A final warning. Which meant, whatever they had been hiding, they were finally ready to reveal it. The message did not repeat. It didn't need to. Within hours, every major communication network in the galaxy was saturated. Clips replayed, analyzed, debated, frame by frame, word by word, because of one simple truth. Humanity had never spoken to the entire galaxy before. Not like this, not directly, not openly. It began without announcement. No signal buildup, no detectable transmission. One moment, silence. The next, every screen activated. Military command centers, civilian networks, deep space relays, private systems, all of them, simultaneously. A single image appeared, a human, seated, still, calm. Behind her, no grand display, no military presence, no symbols of power, just a simple background. And yet, every being watching felt it immediately. This was not a leader asking for attention. This was a leader who already had it. My name is Alara Voss. Her voice was steady, measured. I speak on behalf of humanity. No translation delay, no distortion. Every species heard her in their own language. Perfectly. Another impossibility. You have engaged in hostile actions against our species on multiple occasions. No anger, no accusation, just fact. We have responded each time in defense. Images appeared. The first war. Human ships burning. Colonies collapsing. The second. Cities under bombardment. Fleets falling. The third. The shattered remains of the ninth expansion fleet. Then, the images changed. Human rescue operations. Medical aid. Reconstruction. Survivors. Alien survivors. Being helped. We have shown restraint. A pause. Long enough for the weight of that word to settle. We have chosen preservation over retaliation. Another pause. But you have mistaken that choice. Her eyes lifted slightly, not in anger, not in hatred, in certainty, for limitation. Everything changed in that moment. The tone, the presence, the feeling. For the first time, the galaxy understood. This was not a warning from a weak species. This was a statement from something that had been holding back. The background behind her dissolved, replaced by space, but not empty space. Structures, massive, impossible, platforms the size of planets, constructs orbiting stars, networks stretching across entire systems, invisible before, now fully visible. We have spent the last 5 decades preparing for a possibility we hoped would never occur. More images, ships emerging from nothing, fleets hidden between layers of space, energy patterns that defied known physics, yet continue to escalate. New images, alien fleets mobilizing, weapons being constructed, plans being drawn. Your leaders speak openly of further aggression. The images stopped. The room, every room, across the galaxy, felt smaller, quieter. Illyra Voss leaned forward slightly, not aggressive, not threatening, just closer. This is humanity's final warning. No music, no dramatic pause, just silence. The next act of aggression against Earth, its colonies, or its allies, a fraction of a second, will be met with immediate and total system-level erasure. The same words, but now they meant something completely different, because now everyone had seen what humans were capable of, or at least a glimpse. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't emphasize the threat. She didn't need to. We do not seek conflict. The final line, we never have. A pause. But we will not endure it again. The transmission ended. No fade, no signal drop. Just gone. For several seconds, no one in the galaxy moved. No one spoke. No one reacted. Because something fundamental had just shifted. For centuries, power had belonged to those who could take. Now, power belonged to those who could choose not to, and had finally decided they were done choosing. The silence did not last. It couldn't. Within minutes of the broadcast ending, every major command network in the galaxy erupted. Emergency sessions were called. Military channels flooded. Encrypted lines activated across thousands of systems. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was not preparing for war. It was trying to understand if war was still possible. 6 hours later, the Galactic Council chamber was filled. Representatives from every major civilization, some ancient, some newly risen, all watching the same replay. Illyra Voss, her voice, her words, system-level erasure. The phrase echoed again and again through the chamber. Ambassador Kelthus of the Erewhon Dominion rose first. Tall, armored, unyielding. This is deception. His voice carried easily. Confident, certain. No species develops such capabilities in secrecy. No civilization hides construct of that scale without detection. Murmurs of agreement spread. They are using psychological warfare, he continued. Projection, fabrication, illusions designed to instill fear. He gestured toward the display. If these structures were real, if these weapons existed, they would have used them already. A pause. They did not. Conclusion delivered. Simple. Clean. They are bluffing. They are not bluffing. The voice came from across the chamber. Quiet. Controlled. Admiral Sarek Tau stood slowly. All eyes turned. He did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. I have engaged human forces directly. The chamber stilled. I have lost fleets to weapons we cannot identify. A gesture. The battlefield footage appeared. Ships collapsing, disappearing, failing without cause. No signatures. No patterns. No explanation. He looked around the chamber. And that was before this broadcast. A ripple of unease moved through the room. A third voice entered. Flat, emotionless. The probability of deception is decreasing. The speaker was not a person. It was a vessel, a body controlled by the synaptic collective, a civilization of shared consciousness. We have analyzed the transmission, it continued. Energy fluctuations during broadcast indicate nonlinear information transfer. Translation, the message itself, should not have been possible. Additional data, it said. The chamber darkened. A new projection appeared. Deep space scans. The anomalies, invisible structures, energy readings from empty space, unmapped systems, all confirmed across independent observation platforms, the collective stated. Silence followed. Not disbelief this time. Calculation. The chamber fractured into three camps. One, the arrogant. They are exaggerating. No species becomes that powerful unnoticed. If we act quickly, we can still neutralize them. Two, the cautious. We need more data. Observe before acting. Delay engagement. Three, the afraid. If even half of this is real, we cannot win. Ambassador Kelthus rose again. Then we strike first. The room reacted instantly. We deploy long-range sterilization protocols. We eliminate Earth before these capabilities can be activated. The words hung heavy. Genocide, total annihilation. But for some, it made sense. If they are telling the truth, Keltus continued, then delay ensures our destruction. He turned. If they're lying, then we remove a threat before it matures. A dangerous logic, one that had worked many times before. Sarek spoke again. Quiet, sharp. You are assuming they are still preparing. The chamber stilled. They are not. A pause. They already said this was a warning. He looked toward the projection of a human leader, not a negotiation. Another pause, not a demand. His voice lowered slightly. A warning implies a decision has already been made. Before anyone could respond, an alert cut through the chamber. Sharp, urgent, unmistakable. Incoming deep space telemetry. All displays shifted instantly. Coordinates appeared. A system, dead, cold, uninhabited. The same system referenced in the human transmission. This is the location, the analyst said. Confirmed. A second later, energy spike detected. The chamber went completely silent. How strong? Someone whispered. The answer came back slowly. Increasing. Graphs began to rise. Exponentially. This is impossible. Another voice said. Stars do not generate energy like this without. He stopped because the next reading came in. Thermal ignition detected. A pause. The star is activating. Every being in the chamber stared at the display because the system they were observing contained a star that had been dead for millions of years, and it was beginning to shine. Sarek didn't speak. He didn't need to, because the realization had already spread through the room. This wasn't a warning. This wasn't a bluff. This wasn't even a threat. What they were about to witness was proof. The fleets arrived cautiously. No formation, no aggression, no coordination, just distance. Hundreds of vessels from dozens of species gathered at the edge of the dead system. No one wanted to be first. No one wanted to be close. Maintain position, Sarek ordered quietly from his command deck. Distance, 10 light minutes from system boundary. Not enough to feel safe, but far enough to pretend. It had once been nothing. A cold star, dead planets, frozen debris, a system forgotten by time. Now, it was changing. The star pulsed faintly, not with natural fusion, with something else, something controlled. Energy levels rising, sensors reported, source unknown. Of course, always unknown. Then, a single object appeared. No warp signature, no approach vector, no transition. One moment, empty space. The next, a ship, small, barely visible against the growing light of the star. That's it, someone whispered. 400 meters. No visible weapons. No detectable shielding. No measurable output. And yet, every sensor in the fleet locked onto it instantly, because nothing about it made sense. A channel opened. No encryption. No delay. Observers! The human voice said calmly. Not a greeting. Not a welcome. An acknowledgement. You are advised to maintain your current distance. A pause. For your safety. Some ships immediately began to pull back. Others held position. Pride, curiosity, fear, all of it mixed together. Sarek didn't move. Hold position, he said, because if this was a demonstration, he needed to see it. Deployment beginning. The human ship didn't move, didn't charge weapons, didn't shift position. It simply released something, a small object, barely the size of a shuttle. No engine flare, no propulsion, and yet it moved. Fast, too fast. Tracking target. Sensors reported. We've lost it. What do you mean lost it? It's still there, but its position is inconsistent. The object flickered across displays. Not jumping, not teleporting, just existing in multiple places at once. Object approaching stellar surface. The star pulsed. Then the object touched it, and reality paused. Not metaphorically, not visually, literally. For a fraction of a second, every sensor reading froze. Every signal stopped. Every system hesitated, as if the universe itself was thinking. Then everything changed. The star did not explode. It did not collapse. It did something far worse. It obeyed. The surface folded inward, not like matter, not like energy, like information being rewritten. Gravity is fluctuating. No. Correcting. No. That's not possible. Spectral output is changing. Elements are... This doesn't make sense. The star began to restructure itself, layer by layer, core to surface, hydrogen rearranged, helium redefined, new elements formed, elements that should not exist. Then the effect spread, outward, from the star to the planets. The first world, rocky, lifeless, simply stopped, then dissolved, not into debris, not into plasma, into nothing, then into something else. Where did it go? Someone shouted. It's not gone, a scientist whispered. It's being converted. Converted into what? No answer. One by one, planets vanished. Asteroid belts unraveled. Moons ceased to exist. Matter broke down into particles. Particles into energy. Energy into something else. Something no system could define. Sarek gripped the edge of his command console. Report. We're losing visual. No, we're not. There's nothing left to see. The entire system was gone, not destroyed, not erased, rewritten. For a moment, there was nothing, just a star, floating in empty space, alone. Then the human voice returned, calm, steady, unchanged. What you have witnessed, a pause, is a standard construction process. No one reacted. No one could. Mass energy conversion into structured quantum data. The words meant nothing, followed by controlled reconstruction. Still nothing. Phase 2 will now begin. Another object deployed, this one larger, more stable. It moved into the empty space where the system had been. And then, reality reversed. Light condensed. Energy stabilized. Matter returned. Slowly, carefully, a planet reappeared. Perfect, smooth, symmetrical. Another, and another. Each one better. Atmospheres balanced. Orbits precise. Structures embedded into their very formation. Worlds designed, not formed. The asteroid belt returned, but organized. Moons appeared, positioned with intention. Even the star itself shone brighter, cleaner, healthier. For hours, that was all it took to dismantle and rebuild an entire solar system. Perfectly. The human voice returned one last time. Demonstration complete. Silence. This process is used for large-scale construction and environmental restoration. A pause. This is not a weapon. That line hit harder than everything before it, because if this was not a weapon, then what was? Sarek stared at the perfect system now floating where a dead one had existed hours before, and for the first time, he understood the message completely. Humanity had not shown them destruction. They had shown them control, absolute, effortless, unquestionable. And if they could do this, with precision, then they could do the opposite. Without it, no one spoke. Not immediately. Not after. Not for a long time. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of observers. Entire civilizations watching in real time. And not a single voice broke the silence. Because there was nothing left to argue. No theory. No strategy. No countermeasure. Only one conclusion. They were completely outmatched. It began slowly. One ship turned away. No announcement. No communication. It simply adjusted its trajectory and left. Then another and another within minutes. Entire fleets began withdrawing from the system. Not in formation, not with discipline, but with urgency. Controlled panic. Orders, Admiral? Sarek didn't respond immediately because for the first time in his career, there were no correct orders. Engage? Impossible. Retreat? Meaningless. Prepare? For what? He looked at the reconstructed system. Perfect. Untouched. As if nothing had happened. As if everything that had just occurred had been effortless. All ships, he said finally. A pause. Withdraw. No hesitation this time. Because every officer on that bridge already knew the reaction spread faster than any signal. On core worlds, emergency sessions were abandoned mid-debate. On military stations, attack plans were deleted. On frontier colonies, defensive alerts were lifted, not because the threat was gone, but because resistance was no longer a rational option. Ambassador Kelphis did not speak again, not publicly, not privately, because everything he had argued, every assumption, every certainty, had been erased in 4 hours, not disproven, made irrelevant. The Synaptic Collective released a statement within the hour. Probability of successful military engagement with humanity, 0.0003% and decreasing. It was the lowest confidence rating ever recorded, followed by a second line. Recommendation: avoid all hostile interaction indefinitely. Not caution. Avoidance. Cross thousands of systems. Shipyards went quiet. Weapons programs were suspended. Long-range targeting systems powered down. Entire fleets were reassigned. From offense to observation. Not watching for weakness. Watching for movement. Admiral Sarek Tau submitted his resignation within the same cycle. No ceremony. No announcement. Just a single message. I no longer possess the strategic capacity to engage this threat. It was not defeat. It was acknowledgement. For generations, the galaxy had operated under a simple belief. That power was something you could measure. Ships, weapons, numbers. Humanity had shattered that belief because what they demonstrated was not power. It was control over power itself. The ability to decide when to use it, when to limit it, when to hide it, and most terrifying of all, when to reveal it. Trade routes shifted, not away from danger, but away from proximity. No one wanted to be near human space, not because they feared attack, but because they feared being noticed. Sarek stood alone in the observation deck of his now silent flagship. Stars stretched endlessly before him, unchanged, and yet everything was different, because somewhere out there was a species that could erase systems, rebuild them, and choose not to do it again. For now, 3 months later, the galaxy was quieter than it had ever been. Not peaceful, not united, but restrained. Trade continued. Diplomacy resumed. Civilizations carried on as they always had. But something fundamental had changed. Conflict still existed. Disputes, tensions, rivalries. But full-scale war? Gone. Not outlawed. Not forbidden. Just abandoned. Because every species now understood a simple truth. Any war could escalate. And if it escalated far enough, it might reach them. No treaties were signed. No laws were passed. And yet, every military strategist in the galaxy operated under the same silent assumption. Do not provoke humanity. Not because humans demanded it, but because they didn't. Humanity did not expand, did not conquer, did not enforce control. They didn't even respond to most diplomatic requests. Alliance proposals? ignored. Technology exchange offers, declined. Military cooperation, rejected. Their message remained unchanged. We seek no dominion. We require no alliance. We will not be tested again. They still came, dozens of species, then hundreds, begging, requesting, pleading, help with dying stars, failing ecosystems, collapsing worlds. Humanity could fix all of it. Everyone knew that now. And yet, they refused, not out of cruelty, not out of indifference, but out of understanding, because any species given that power would eventually use it, and the galaxy had already proven what it chose to do with power. President Alara Voss addressed her council in private. We gave them 3 chances, she said. No anger, no regret, just fact. They chose conflict every time. A pause. We will not give them a 4th. Not every civilization reacted with fear. Some chose reflection. The Altari withdrew their fleets permanently. The Virates Collective redirected all military production toward planetary restoration. Independent systems began forming neutral zones, spaces where weapons were not permitted. Small changes, but real ones, because for the first time in galactic history, peace was not enforced by balance. It was enforced by consequence. Admiral Sarek Tau finished writing his final report in quiet isolation. No longer an admiral, no longer a commander, just a witness. He stared at the last line for a long time before recording it. Then he spoke. Humanity did not win the wars we fought against them. A pause. They chose not to end us. Another pause. They chose restraint when they had no reason to. He exhaled slowly. And now, his voice lowered, they have chosen not to ask again. Across the galaxy, in places both ancient and newly born, a single idea began to take root. For thousands of years, power had meant dominance, the ability to conquer, to control, to destroy. Humanity changed that definition. Power was not the ability to act. It was the ability to choose not to. And somewhere in the vast silence between stars, humanity watched, not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as something far more dangerous, a species that had the power to end everything, and chose every single day not to